So how are you faring there?
You know, we're just like with the crew. We're staying 6 feet away. We're trying to follow that routine.
Yeah.
I'm going to start a little Instagram thing with Source Studio. I've started this nonprofit called, Sustained Operations, Utilizing Resources for Community / Culture and Environment. It's a
Yeah.
mouthful, but that's what we're doing in the Fifth Ward. But also, we're going to start something called Co-Instavid, just for our artist teams to do like 1 minute, probably more humorous ended kind of connection pieces rather than the seriousness of
Yeah.
everything, just so we can, it's like limited time, little quick things. So I'll introduce that real soon. So I got that going. So as far as how it's going, I'm one of those human beings that have the three bad things, age, diabetics,
Right.
and formal lung disease. So those things are terrible for what's happening.
You have
So
to be careful.
yeah, so we've turned the house into like nobody but Helen and myself. My wife Helen are the
Yeah.
only ones in the house, and then the studio is that this neutral territory
Yeah.
where we can go 6 feet apart and try to keep things going and supported. And so we got a bunch of new projects going, in the studios, as well as I was mentioning the film that got finished. She's Not There. We just submitted to Cannes, and now that's been canned for a while. So, but not that we would be, not that we would be selected, but you got to try. But
Right.
we'll probably enter a lot of festivals with it, and that's been a real interesting project because it's like, how do you make a film that after you watch the film, you want to look up somebody,
Yeah.
how to make it compelling enough. And it's about the Baroness Elsa von Freytag-Loringhoven that you probably know about her.
Yeah.
She, the model for Duchamp and Man Ray, but now scholarship might have it that she is the one who did the urinal, and probably should be co-attributed as some fundamental to the beginning of Dada,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not so male-centric perhaps, but as a conceptual artist myself, I'm, if you talk about your legacy, you want to give credit where credit's due,
That's right. That's
So
right.
maybe about the objects, everything she's known for, maybe it is about the objects she's known for, but maybe her attitude, which was interesting to look at it from that point of view, how I feel I have both traits, like the meditation, the more conceptual and cerebral.
Yeah.
But also I have a reactive personality as well to conditions in the social. So, which is more like perhaps what she was personified, Of course, that's my parents as well. So,
Well,
So,
Mel, you've always been ahead of your time,
mhm.
and I've always felt like in some ways you're one of the artists that's speaking to us from the future.
Mm,
And, we've now entered a period of extreme flux or kind of hyper uncertainty. At least that's the way that it feels right now in larger cities and
yeah.
denser areas. What are the ways in which you think we might weather this? And what are the lessons or what are the ways that you imagine American life might change coming out of?
Well, I don't know. When these things start. Well, I'll tell you. When the election happened, I kind of said, well, to many people who were in disbelief back in 2016, I said, welcome to the America that is.
Hmm.
This is what it really is, And then, sadly, predictably, it has been revealing itself constantly, even right now in our moment of great danger. but I guess if anything, I try to embrace it, and if not embrace it, but to understand it as an introduction to the world. You know, many people in the world. It's like how I can achieve some little greater degree of empathy from this.
Right.
Where things are can ultimately be beneficial to my production. Is how I look at it. Like my isolation, self-imposed, and how lucky is that?
Yeah.
Compared to people that are imposed upon that have no choice in the matter. You see, that's something that has always reverberated with me, and like to understand that is like, wow, okay, and so it's almost like how to adopt another kind of mindset. Another thing is it's time to really think about what the real challenges are. You know, I think like most recently I was at Creative Time and they forced me to give one sentence about, did I tell you about this?
No, no.
It was the 10th anniversary of Creative Time in New York. So they brought some artists that have been involved with Creative Time. You know the organization, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so Ann Pasternak, a bunch of people were there, and the new director. And so that's all cool. So they said, Mel, if you come, you're restricted to one sentence because you'll go on and on. I said, wow, okay, thank you for telling me how I am, but okay, I'll do it. So I did come up with a sentence. And what was so funny is that when everybody came on, and no disrespect, you know, like whether Michael Primo or Tom Finkel-Pearl, you know, artists coming in, and they gave like monologues, you know, about, because the question was truth.
Yeah.
The issue is truth, right? I kind of said, I kept it to one sentence. Basically, it's a delusion to think truth will be effective against the constructions of belief. You know, because the issue to me now is like, now, if we have a little moment here, I was coming up with one way of describing it. It's almost like, is that good enough? It's almost like, how can we make truth, or not truth, that's too flexible and malleable, you know? How can you even just make fact believable? And this is a goal. This is a creative goal. Look at what's happening even when the facts about this very microbial kind of event, you know, this viral event, this pandemic, and even then to have any kind of argumentation about facts, you know, is incredible. It means that maybe the people who have interpreted the world have not been effective, you know, in some way. I kind of feel like our job description is rapidly evolving. I also see that.
You mean the job description of artists?
Oh yeah, jobs, because you know what I've been noticing. I was asked about, you know, one of the greatest challenges that people keep talking about is climate change. By the way, to me, this may not be related, but it may be related in the sense of the way how the climate of transmission has changed rapidly, you know, in our time, how we can fly to one place to another, all this. So there's a climate. So the job description is how do we create climates other than the ones we're existing in. Another thing is like you can't move from one kind of exercise to another. And maybe artists are behind, I'm behind, I'll just say myself. It's like, you kind of need this idea of social justice and some empathetic understanding of culture in order to have a collective enterprise even to deal with something like climate change or this pandemic, right? And so it's almost like another job description. How do we create that kind of effect? Can it be through, so make a long story short, you're asking me, this is a time to really be asking those questions that I haven't had time to ask.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, if you take the, you know, the Bruce Nauman kind of ironic aphorism, it's the role of the true artist to reveal mystic, or it's the role of the artist to reveal mystic truths.
Yeah.
What the role of the artist is to actually make facts believable.
Yeah. Well, see, I go to James Baldwin, who talks about the job of the artist is to unearth the question buried within the answers.
Right.
And I think that's even more provocative, because it's like, it's not to give an answer, but it's to create something that is sustainable. And I think just like in our understanding of everything from Greek philosophy, if you want to go there, is, from Aristotle gave the encyclopedia and the answers, where the Socratic kind of method created the questions that we need to really examine ourselves, you see? And I think I'm more in that league in terms of the Baldwin school. Maybe no disrespect to Nauman, because he gave me a lot of questions, right? So it continues to. And so therefore an excitement. So it's almost like we have to look at our job descriptions, or also be hypercritical in our time about, okay, this maybe stopped production as I knew it, but then I'm engaged in this questioning of then what is meaningful, right? And how I'm dealing with it, I'm having time to again return to the studio to make things even more feverishly, to try to keep projects alive that are engaged in community beyond me, so I could be part of something, and to exercise this kind of belief that it's not about my rugged individualism anymore, or my role or idea of an artist. If I want to be part of something, not just because it's cool, because my very survival as a member of society is dependent on it. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Whether I'm going to be working in Chicago and the South Side, I'll be working in Little Haiti, and I'm working in the Fifth Ward of Houston. I'm from the Fifth Ward of Houston. That's why I'm going back. I was supposed to be back, but they cancel all flights. And so it's like, so it's like.
Project in Houston.
Yeah? The project in Easton?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, they ask these placemaking grants and these so-called art things, invite people to redefine the neighborhood for cultural purposes. I understand that, but it's like branding, and my parents had a little Cornish grocery store in Fifth Ward, so I know Fifth Ward a little bit, of then. But I always went back, and that's close to Rick Lowe and Project Row houses, right?
Yeah.
And but when I went to Fifth, I just said, okay, well, I'll work with you and the architects and the social urban planners, and we'll work at it, and y'all can go ahead and go make those brands. Go ahead. But I'm not. That's not so much I'm interested in. I think the neighborhood or places, people, not places, not placemaking. People deserve action brands.
Right.
Action. And especially people have been waiting for quite a long time for words to come about. So last year, we already started something. While they're having the art car parade, there's a Fifth Ward festival, right?
Yeah.
And we launched the first part of it is I Am the Fifth. It's very much like I'm the man kind of thing. But I Am the Fifth is to give some kind of identity, that's cohesive. It's like in our times also it's not about maybe to eradicate places of class, to eradicate these kind of distinctions. And, nothing's more egomaniacal than trying to be an artist sometimes, and to eradicate that a little, let it go down a little bit. And you know what I'm saying? So it's sort of like that. But anyway, in the Fifth Ward, it's I'm the Fifth is one project, which will be actions to identify the actual people and the boundaries of the Fifth, or the parameters of the Fifth, and what that entails, more than just physical. Why? Because if I heard the message from the people there, the concerns about gentrification,
Right.
I said one of the first projects is to establish a presence, an unmistakable presence within the city of Houston. 2, next project Memory builds the monument. Memory builds the monument. I listened to the people. One of the places I remember hearing about as a kid was Club Matinee, which was like the Cotton Club of the South, who had almost every known entertainer in the Black music industry or the African-American music come through there, from Cab Calloway, who opened it up, to all the way to the 70s. We had Aretha and James Franklin, the father, performed there in the Fifth Ward. We had, James Brown. You start naming everyone you want to name from a period from the 30s, 40s to the 70s had to perform there. So we are engaged right now. I'm working with some filmmakers from the Fifth Ward and creating the Bill Murray Builds the Monument to use the documentary as a means of catalyzing the rebirth, the reconstruction, or in different unusual forms, a new Club Matinee. So the documentary and the memories help build a place that's, again, returns, but not necessarily in the same forms. I can't reveal too much, but It's like to use documentary that's essential in our very crucial time when people of age are being lost. They can remember this, to capture them for the sake of the memory of the neighborhood, but then to utilize it for creative atmosphere for artists and builders to come from, and we're working on that. So that's another project. Third project is the frontier of the future. The frontier of the future, because the Fifth Ward was one of the hardest hit by Harvey.
Yeah.
But it had the least amount of presence in the press, because you can understand why. I know you're not from Houston, but you know what? But you're from the territories. You work with the Astor. You understand.
Yeah.
The edges where people have to live are the least respected, or you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the obligation of culture to me,
right,
to have actions there. But then to even push culture too, to say, well, just culture is not enough.
That's
How
right.
can we apply? And this is a challenge. It's like back in the 70s when I was getting into like ecology and all these things, you go into this realm where if I would talk about greening and, Earth Day and all these things, and you take it to the Fifth Ward, they said, well, that's fine for you. That's good for you. I'm glad you're doing that. But we got to think about how we're going to survive economically and physically and socially. We have a lot of people, dying, from not just starvation or whatever, but even violence. How are these two going to mix? I think in my view, and speaking with people in the Fifth, the frontier of the future is essentially a challenge to form the bridge because you can't build a future based on ecology without relationship. Then social justice and those issues must be bridged there first. And then to combine that with a green perspective of how you construct not just your buildings and your grading, which all is implied in this, right? How to to build a model of how to live in a future flooded Houston or future refugee crisis, and all these things have to be put in the mix. But the people that are on the edges that suffer the most, maybe many times just physically because of location and economics, could create the model for people all over Houston.
That's right.
Like that. So that's the frontier is the future there. See, so, and it's not just the physical structures; it's the models of how we all interact. You know what I'm saying? So if it's how they interact with each other, then this process is going. It's it's just that it's a fundamental beginning, right?
It's so. I mean, it's so interesting. I think it's, as you're saying, we'll learn so much about ourselves, but maybe even more importantly, we'll learn about the experiences of others.
Yeah. Or we learn together. You learn together, really, because that's the opportunity, if you want to call it that, because we're entering unknown, then it behooves us to think in this fashion.
That's right.
I don't really, and so again, back to your question, how are we doing in this unknown time? I don't know, actually, you know what I'm saying? So that's what that's what's really intriguing.
The unknown unknown.
And the unknown can essentially needs to be not answered by me,
Right.
but actually you and I, and in a more collective sense
Yeah.
is how you answer it.
Well, I can't wait to see you again in Houston. And I also wanted to ask, who do you know in Houston that you'd like to say hello to or send, um,
Gosh,
send good wishes to?
well, that list is way too long. That's a whole nother conversation. If I mention one, I'm going to miss another, and because I did, you
Well,
know,
that could be private too. That we can share. If you want to say hello to someone, we can share it just with them.
yeah. Well, I'm going to say, you know what? No, because now these days, and I should even say this to you. Every time I meet somebody, I say I'm sorry instead of pleased to meet you, because I've escaped certain places, and it's because I either owe them money uh, or I've insulted them or some way in the past and I've forgotten.
Well, the story that Beyonce is telling now is she finally got to meet Mel Chin.
No, I don't think so. Maybe Blue can tell that story. Beyonce has forgotten. But I'll get back at Blue and I'll come back without a patch and say, look, I just want to explain. I'm sorry, Blue. Anyway, to be continued. There are people there really that I care about that, yeah. But, sometimes it's the people that, this is ironic, to be honest. It's almost like it is that very age group that's being endangered right now. If people show up,
That's right.
that's really, it's, and that's true. I could say that right now. And, I'd love to say, I could tell you, is say hello to Jim, right? Jim Harithus, right? Who was in your position many years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not a good time. You see, he's going. So that's the way it is. So that's the poignancy of our times too. It's
That's
not
right.
about us doing what we want to do.
Yeah.
It's
That's
doing
right.
what we have to do. Yeah.
Well, Mel, stay safe there and take care of Helen
Yeah.
and your
You know,
team.
yeah. We will.
We'll check in again soon.
Yeah. And we'll be together soon. Thank you for having a combo, man.
Yeah, man.
All right. Stay strong.
Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mel.